Hi, this is Curious Mystics Podcast, formerly Spiritual Mamas Podcast. Together we explore the mysteries of the spiritual world, sometimes boldly,
Sometimes cautiously.
but always with open hearts.
And curious minds.
Let's go. Hello,
Hello.
I'm Aericka.
And I'm Kim.
Welcome back to Curious Mystics Podcast.
Yes, thank you for being with us. Curious
Yeah.
Mystics Podcast, our
Yes.
new rebrand.
Yes.
Today
Yes.
we're super excited. We have a special guest with us today.
Yeah, we have Karen Riccio from Solden Tarot, and she's going to talk to us about tarot cards and tarot readings and all that jazz. So, welcome, Karen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Karen is an intuitive guide and passionate advocate for self-healing. After navigating her own journey through depression and anxiety, Karen found deep healing through tarot, yoga, and spiritual self-care. Now she helps others reconnect with their personal power through intuitive practices that foster mental wellness, inner trust, and soulful connection. Her mission is to create a space where every soul feels seen, heard, and loved, including her doggies. So, yeah, so we're super excited to have her on and hear what she has to say about tarot. Yeah, so welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we had done a was it like a tarot and yoga at one of the local coffee shops,
Yeah,
and
sorry. I love that you guys came to that.
yeah, it was a lot of
That was
fun.
fun.
And it was like an interesting combination of like yoga, and then we got a tarot card reading afterwards, and it was fun. And honestly, it was pretty spot on for what was going on in my
Yay.
life at the time. Do you remember, Kim?
I do. I was trying to find my notes before we got in today because I remember taking notes that day and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find them, but I remember at the time being like, oh my goodness. Like, just reading me exactly what was going on. And I was like, okay, I hear you. I hear the message you're giving me. So let me lean into that. So,
And it was literally like a 2 second, like, here's
yeah.
was like 3 cards or something like that. So yeah, it was
Yeah, I
pretty
really
cool.
love those events because I really feel like since we do like the whole practice together before.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I usually have like pretty good feedback from my tarot clients, but like those nights, there's just something special about them, I think, because we all kind of like get that energy together and we
Mm-hmm.
all have that like Mariah gets to lead us through like a very intentional practice and like
Mm-hmm.
gets that all in our minds. And I think we've been doing tarot and yoga. We do it like every other month. We've done it for like the last year, little over a year now. And those nights, like I always have like such good connections and everyone always like I maybe with you guys I did 3 cards. I usually do like 2 cards. I have switched it up,
Mm-hmm.
but like such small readings and it gives so much to people. So I love being able to do that. And obviously just connecting with people. I love that one-on-one.
Yeah, yeah, it was really cool. So how did you get into tarot? I mean, I know we read your little bit of a bio there, but like kind of in you could expand on that.
Yeah, sure. So I got into tarot really just for mental health. I'm 34 now, so I think about 10 years ago, I I went on like a journey of just like being more healthy, being like wellness journey and
Mm-hmm.
connecting to myself. And in that, I started going to therapy. Going to therapy, I somehow connected with like a spiritual therapist.
Oh,
So
cool.
it was really cool, or a holistic therapist is what I should say. So
Mm-hmm.
she was into a lot of this stuff and she got me into meditating.
Mm-hmm.
I was always into astrology, like you always like to read your sun sign and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But so like as I started meditating and just doing these things, I started searching more within the spiritual world because I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And then honestly, I was just following a artist on Instagram. Her name is Danielle Noel, and she makes the decks, the Star Child Tarot and the Moon Child Tarot. And she's a collage artist. It's like very ethereal and like purples and pinks and just like really fun colors. And I was following her, and all of a sudden one day she was like, buy my tarot deck. And I had like this internal, like, oh my God, I want to buy it, but like, who am I to read
Right.
tarot? I had this whole like imposter syndrome, like,
Mm.
I'm not like a psychic. I'm not a medium. I don't have people from the other side talking to me. Like, I've never shown any or never felt like I've shown any of these characteristics. So, like, who the hell am I to do
Mm-hmm.
tarot, to have a deck and do these things?
Yeah, we
Um,
feel that.
yeah,
We've done that.
yeah. And that is like a huge reason why Solden is here, is to like show people that, like, I promise you, you can do tarot. Um, and eventually, like, I ended up reading a book. It's called Material Girl Mystical World. It's by Ruby Warrington.
Okay.
And it is a self-help book. And it's a really cool book because she talks about like all her kind of like first times, like first time doing yoga, meditating, like all of these things. And one of the chapters was tarot for mental health.
Hmm.
And when I read that, I bought the deck and I never looked back.
Hmm.
And it has grown into Solden today. So I was reading just for myself. I was really just using tarot for journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I didn't realize like we have this inner voice that we need to listen to and pay attention to and honor.
Mm-hmm.
So it really helped me connect with that. And it really helped me with journaling because my journaling was very like surface level, like, oh, I saw this person today and I
Right.
went out to dinner with this. And so to kind of like dive deeper, I kind of tricked myself into like analyzing the cards. But it
Analyzing yourself
ultimately, yeah,
instead.
analyzing yourself when you look at the cards. So
Yeah.
after like just realizing how much it helped me, I just wanted to share it with others.
That's
Very
pretty
cool.
interesting.
Thank you.
I was going to ask, and I think this is a good moment to kind of do that. I'm not well versed with tarot, but I've always found it interesting. And I think every time I see something online or talk to somebody, there's always so many different ways of like learning tarot and getting to know the story and all of that. And you mentioning like using it for journaling is not something that I've heard a lot of. So would
Mm-hmm.
you say that that was probably the best way for you to learn tarot? And would you recommend that or a different type of way for somebody who wants to learn?
So for me personally, I read tarot specifically for mental health, even in like the readings I do for others. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
if people ask, like, I always give the option to like, what do you know, do you want to look into anything specific? I don't do like love readings
Mm-hmm.
or stuff that really looks into anything outside of yourself. So for me, learning the cards in that way and like learning to find meanings to the cards in that way, it was definitely super helpful. And then the other piece of that is like, in school, like as someone who would like study for test, or everyone studied for tests, but one of the ways that I would study for tests is like writing things down. That was the best way for me to like remember things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was also kind of like just learning the cards, building the cards. It was another relationship of like writing the messages and things like that. So for me personally, I think it was great. And I also think for learning to read them for like a mental health aspect, it's a really great way to learn them too.
I love that. I think there's also something that kind of, for me, draws me into that because anytime that I have uh, not planned a reading but gotten a reading, typically it's drawn towards like career or love, and I'm not always looking for that. So to look at it from a different perspective and say, no, really internally, what can I be paying attention to or learning about myself is it's a new way I think for me to look at it, and I love the idea of that.
Yeah, I think ultimately, like, my big thing is like everything comes from even love. Like, look at what that energy is surrounding you and how it's
Mm-hmm.
affecting you, and
Mm-hmm.
you can get answers that way. I always looked out, like I had no problem thinking about others all the time. It was the fact that I couldn't focus on myself. So that too is just like, just focus on you and do you. You are like the one thing that you can control and that you can take care of. And this is a way to kind of like go with the flow and honor that.
Yeah, I feel like as healers, we all have that problem where we have no trouble helping somebody else. When it
Yeah,
comes to ourselves, it's like a struggle for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. Um, so can you tell us what tarot is?
Sure.
In your own words.
Yeah, so tarot is like a divination tool. You and then depending on how you use it is what you get like the messages from. But I look at it as like a spiritual journey. You kind of see all the cyclical natures of life are kind of like wrapped into the deck and the life lessons that we get to go on. So it's a cool way to just connect with like messages outside of yourself. So people have so many different modalities of kind of like connecting with the universe and hearing messages. And tarot is just one of those tools that you can use to hear those messages or see those messages.
Nice.
So it seems like tarot really helped you to dive in. Is that the only form or preferred form of divination that you do, or are there other times when you gravitate more towards other forms of divination?
Tarot is pretty much the only thing that I use. Yeah, and then I'll use Oracle but it's still cards like in conjunction with tarot, but I pretty much just stick to tarot, yeah.
Hey, friends, we just wanted to take a moment to remind you all that you can interact with us on social media. We can be found at Curious Mystics Podcast on all platforms.
And if you haven't already, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share so that we can keep showing up for you guys with new weekly episodes and content. Thank you for hanging out with us so far, and stay curious. Yeah, I wanted to know the difference between Oracle and Tarot because I personally am more drawn towards my Oracle deck that I have versus my Tarot. I don't know if it's just because like the connection is different for me because of that deck or whatever, but
Yeah, it very much could be. I was always like a very much tarot person, but I had like one Oracle deck come into my life and I was like it changed my view on Oracle cards and my connection with them. Biggest thing, the way that I explain tarot versus Oracle, tarot follows a set structure. So every tarot deck has the four suits. That is the minor arcana. The four suits are included in. It's set up just like a deck of playing cards. And then in addition to that minor arcana, you have a major arcana. And the thing about this is like basically any tarot deck you can switch to will have those cards in it. There are different interpretations of it. So, for example, like Pentacles is one of the suits, but and that's kind of like the original that it comes from. But some decks call it crystals because it's like earth energy. Some call it coins because you can look at it in terms of finances. So there'll be little changes like that that you kind of like have to adjust deck to deck. I also do have some decks that are like by independent artists, so they've added their own interpretation to it. It's still very much in line with what the tarot cards mean, but they might add like an extra major arcana or something like that. But you can basically go to any tarot deck and like the ace of swords is the ace of swords is the ace of swords in every deck. Oracle, totally up to the maker, the theme, the idea, the number of cards, the messages behind it. I have animal oracle decks. I have like a sacred rebels deck that's all about kind of like transformation and moving through things, a Gaia deck that connects you to the earth. So all of those are just messages. The cards can either sometimes they just have like a word on it, sometimes they have a phrase on it. I usually like oracle decks that have like a guidebook because I like to read and like get into it.
Yeah.
But what I always say to people is it's kind of like knowing yourself and even just playing with the decks. But for me, like I'm a creative person, but I like some sort of like box to my creativity. I need
Mm.
some structure to it. So like tarot, having those set like what each card means helps me intuitively to connect to things.
Mm-hmm.
And Oracle, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much that this could be. I get like overwhelmed by it.
Mm-hmm.
Flip side, people can feel overwhelmed by tarot because they have to remember a set meaning, but Oracle, they can be more like intuitive with themselves. So I always tell people, like, you kind of have to know yourself, and you don't always necessarily know it when you buy your first deck. But always go with like what calls to you. I have so many people that come into Solden and they're like, I want to buy a tarot deck. And they just like continuously go back to this Oracle deck. And they're like, oh, but, and I'm like, just buy the Oracle
You're
deck.
like, the Oracle wants you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
like, I'm sorry. Like, if you want to get into tarot, like, come back and talk to me. I'll tell you about it anytime. But like, if a deck is calling to you, definitely follow the deck.
Definitely. Yep.
I agree. I find that I am interested in tarot, but every time I go into a shop, I'm like, none of these are like speaking to me at this moment. But the idea that you just mentioned, or the understanding that like with Oracle decks, there might be a meaning that's given by the maker versus where tarot might have a little bit more structure. Do you find that the different artwork or the different interpretations of it might make a difference on like how you use it? Like you would use one tarot deck for this reason versus this tarot deck for that reason?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I kind of let my tarot deck speak to me. Kind of like when I have a reading, I'm like, who wants to go? I definitely have a go-to deck that like is always there, but every so often, like another deck will kind of like jump in. As you learn your decks, they all kind of have their own different like type of energy. I would say like most of my tarot decks, I have some that are like a little bit more heavier, like, oh, that you have to like listen to this and like sit down and really like pay attention. And some that are a bit more lighthearted, but it's more actually like my oracle decks that tend to switch because of those different like themes.
Mm-hmm.
And that is usually how I like wrap in um like additional messages to people. So as I said, like I have that Sacred Rebels Oracle, and that's very good for like people going through transformation or trying to break through things. So that's when I'll kind of like gear towards that. But tarot decks, yeah, they definitely take on their own energy. And I just kind of I let them tell me like when I can use them.
So, is there anything that you do like to prepare for a reading? Like, do you, I don't know, meditate or, do you have any
Yeah,
specific thing?
absolutely. So, when I'm doing readings for like me personally, my practice varies very much like by how much time I have and what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing. The number one thing I always do, it's like a little form of meditation when I'm shuffling the cards, because obviously you need some way to like ground down.
Mm-hmm.
And either taking like a few deep breaths, but my way is as I shuffle, like the one is an inhale, the two is an exhale. And I use numbers to shuffle. So my birthday is like 4/8. So I either use fours or eights. And when I read for people, I do the same. I always ask people, like, what's your favorite number? And I reduce it down to a single digit. If I have time, like in my own practice, I love to like set up an altar and meditate before, and maybe like use a little bit of lavender for some
Mm-hmm.
aromatherapy. I do have like a prayer that I say, just kind of like opening up to the universe, opening up to spirit guides, opening up to any ancestors, and asking just to deliver any messages that are need to be heard by either me or the person that I'm reading for. And then that's pretty much it. And I don't always do the prayer. Sometimes like at events, it's just harder to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So usually I'll just sometimes have us just like take a breath together.
Yeah.
So that we kind of like land in a spot and just kind of like clear your mind before you get into the cards.
I think
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. It almost sounds like it's very similar to how you were describing earlier that you're drawn a little bit more towards tarot because it has that structure, but you can still kind of connect and do your interpretation in this same sense. It's like you have this structure, and depending on the context or the event or the environment, that may adjust a little bit so you can, play with it, but it's pretty straightforward and like, okay, at the very least, I'm doing these things. And then if I have the space and ability, I'll do more to get in tune.
Exactly. And the shuffling thing is definitely like a thing with my deck. Like my deck knows like I shuffle X amount of times and then it's like time for messages.
It's all right, time to go. Go time. Time to wake up. Nice. What do you think are some like misconceptions about tarot?
I think the biggest one is people holding themselves back from reading it because they don't feel as though they like have any special gifts. Everyone has intuition. Everyone has that inner voice that they can connect to. And that is really, I believe, the most important connection that we can have is with ourselves and with that inner voice and like honoring it. So I like totally just lost track of even what your question was. I'm sorry.
No, you answered it 100%.
As I feel like I was going to say more, but then I was like, I just totally blanked.
It's okay. That's the regular me occurrence. So
Yeah.
don't feel bad.
Me too.
Half the time I'm like talking, I'm like, wait. What were we talking
Why
about?
am I saying this?
100% all the time. That's funny. So I love that there's the mental health aspect to this. So Kim's a mental health provider. She's a therapist, and I'm a nurse practitioner that does mental health medications.
Very cool.
So I find this fascinating. So I'd love to hear how you use this for mental health.
Yeah, so I use it. I guess like when I first started, I used it a lot more than I do now. Your practice with tarot and your connection to it changes over time. My big thing is like I suffered from, and I still do, anxiety and depression. It comes and goes. But for so like up until I was like 24, 25, I didn't realize like I had these things and I was just kind of like going through life and not knowing why I felt uncomfortable or certain things. So really the biggest thing was like I said, journaling with tarot, finding new ways to express that inner voice, to listen to that inner voice, to recognize like what was coming through. And then so that was like more in the beginning. Also a big thing that I would do is like pull a card every morning, one or two cards. Definitely two when I like first started, because one card was like way too like stressful to only get like one meaning for the day.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like it's a way to guide myself back during the day. So like when my thoughts would start to spiral, when I would start like thinking about things that I didn't really need to be thinking about, I would be like, okay, Karen, like what were your cards this morning? And it's like a way to shift you back to yourself and just kind of like checking in and like, okay, like you can kind of laugh because you're like, okay, the card said I was going to do this, or you realize you're kind of like away from what you wanted or what you're kind of like hoping to express to the world. So it's a nice check-in and it's a nice like coming back to yourself. And then now I use it more. Really, I use it more with like my yoga and meditation to kind of like check in as I'm doing those things, and definitely still use it with journaling. I just use it a little bit differently. Like I don't pull cards every morning, but I do whenever I like finish a journaling session, it always ends with tarot just as like an additional thing to like check in with myself. I always find there's something that like I left out that I was like ignoring. So it always kind of adds that way to it.
I think that's great. There's like this anchor of it, right? And as a therapist, when I'm like talking with clients and trying to talk about how do you practice mindfulness, how do you bring yourself back to yourself, that can be the hardest thing to do especially when you're anxious and like, my mind's just going. So it's hard to remember to bring yourself back. So to have an actual anchor of like, okay, this thing is the thing that I can focus on.
Yeah.
Is awesome. And then to take it a step deeper, to notice like, oh yeah, I totally overlooked that or missed that in my journaling or in my reflection, or, reminding yourself of a thing or an aspect or something to bring yourself back to is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's also kind of like for me, it like makes it less serious. Like I could like laugh about things because it was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, you knew this was gonna happen. Like,
Yeah.
The card
so, like,
said it.
yeah, so it's like not as like heavy because you're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, like, yep, okay, it's
Mm-hmm.
here.
It takes the pressure off a little.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you, in getting to know your decks, do you like interview them or ask them specific types of questions?
Yeah, so I do. I have a 3 card spread I like to do. It's called me, you, or it's a 3 card spread, but it's the positions are me, you, us. So it looks at how the deck views me, how the deck views itself, and then how's the deck views us working together. And I like to do that with basically like any new decks that I get. Because there's always, I had one deck, and this is literally why I started reading for others. I had like wanted it for a while and just never ended up buying it for whatever reason. And then I started sold in and I ended up buying it wholesale. So I had like a bunch of decks. And I'm like, okay, am I going to keep one of these for myself? Like, am I going to have one of these as a personal deck? And I interviewed it, and the deck told me, like, if I did not use it to read for others, I was selfish. Um,
Ooh.
so things like that, where it doesn't necessarily, like, you could just get your vibe of a deck. Like, this is a daily deck. This is like a once in a every couple months deck, or like a moon deck. Your certain rituals you kind of like connect to certain decks for.
I feel like that's you, Kim. I think you have those. Don't you have those type of decks? That's how I feel like you do it.
I do. That's why I was asking. I mean, obviously with the Oracle, not the tarot, but I have, we started doing a Saturday card pull,
Ooh, cool.
and which I think we forgot this week.
Yeah, we forgot this week. This week was a lot.
Oh, well.
But we've been doing like a Saturday card pull for social media, and originally I had tried to do it with the deck that I had been using for my daily pulls, and I was like, these messages are not right. Like, they're not applicable for everyone. They're not for everyone to see. It's for me.
Yeah.
So I had to like play around with them a little bit, but
yeah, so I will say my personal decks, I don't read for others. I have like 2 or 3 decks. Like I have a bunch of decks. And some of them I'll use to bring with me places, but I have like specific decks that are like just my deck. I don't let anybody touch them. I don't let anybody read from them. They're just mine. It's my energy, and that's it. That doesn't mean like all the decks that I have for Solden that I read for others, I use on myself too. But I have, yeah, probably like 2 definitely decks that like I don't let anyone, don't touch, don't look at, don't I won't read, I won't pick a card from you for you.
Yep.
They're like specifically my deck. So that's probably like your deck, and was like, nope, don't use me for other people kind of thing.
Yeah, and I could definitely get that from that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard like you shouldn't use other people's decks. Like you shouldn't mess with them.
Yeah, that was kind of like a hard thing for me to navigate when I first started. I feel like there was a lot of, I mean, in tarot and in spirituality, I feel like you can get into a lot of like rules of things. The number one thing I always say is like what you put into it and what you get out of it. If you believe that nobody can touch your deck, then like stick to that. Don't let me tell you anything differently. If you believe like it's cool, everyone can touch your deck, like do your thing. But yeah, that was one that really stuck with me. That's like really the only like superstition that I kind of like subscribe to in the tarot world, is like my decks that are my decks are nothing else. And and every so often like they get a little bit disconnected from you, and I just throw them in my purse and bring them around for a week. I've had one deck in my bag for like a month now, and I'm like, you're just keep coming with me.
Yeah, that's kind of like when we talked about crystals. Like you're supposed to like, love on the crystals and have your energies kind of connect and everything. So yeah, my son bought a tarot card one day, and he was like, "Oh, mom, blah 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 blah." He's like, "You can look at it anytime. You can use it anytime you want." And I was like, don't know. Like,
Yeah.
don't say that. Like, I was like, no, that's yours.
Yeah. That's cute.
It was kind of funny. I'm like, well, thank you, but
Yeah.
not gonna do that. That's funny. Have you ever had like a reading that on yourself that you're just like out, like totally either blew you away or like was out of left field or you didn't understand at the time and then like later
Oh
you
yeah.
understood it and you're
I
like,
just
whoa.
recently, actually, like it wasn't long term, but like just last week when I was like journaling, I got some card and I was like, what the heck? This doesn't make any sense. And then as I started writing, I was like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. So a lot of times I feel like in that initial moment, but yeah, I've definitely had tarot has helped me with like major breakthroughs and really work through a lot of different things when when you're just kind of like beating your head against the wall. Tarot is a great thing to turn to because it's just non-biased. If you can kind of like take yourself out of your own shoes and just read the cards and what they're saying to you. It definitely takes a lot, even still today. You see certain cards and you're like, I don't feel that. You get like defensive at the cards, and it's like they're just here to help you and show you what you need to see in that way.
Yeah, they're like, no, sorry, you do
Yeah.
need to see this. This is what you're happening. Like, this is what you're
So
thinking.
I would say
Sorry.
like I have breakthroughs with tarot very often.
Nice.
I
Yeah.
can appreciate that. It's in that way, it's kind of like it's an active conversation
Yep.
and you need to be listening to the message, but you also need to be like open to hearing that because this is like a conversation with a friend who's not gonna like give no shit. Like, no,
Yeah, pull
I'm gonna
no
tell you what you
punches.
need to know.
Exactly.
Are there any like interesting ways or different ways or maybe not traditional ways that you use your decks or that somebody could? Or maybe
That's a good
something that's not as
question.
common?
Yeah. Hmm.
Or anything that you shouldn't use them for?
Yeah. So that's oh my God, such good questions. Things I've never thought of before. um, so like one thing that I've worked on, and I guess people like talk about this, but I've worked on like really integrating tarot into yoga, and using it as like a tool to set intentions,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like read the energy. So either for myself or for like a class that I'm teaching, this is kind of like the intention of the class. And then at the end of class, we read another card to kind of like bring everything full circle for them. And I feel like that I get like when I get new students, they're like, oh my God, I've never had this before. I've never had tarot read in this way. So that's like for me personally, that's the one I probably come across the most. Also, just like the mental health aspect. Like I get so many people that are like, wow, this was such like a positive reading. And it's not, I don't try to, I'm not like toxic positivity, but I really believe in like that the things that happen to us for a reason. And the stuff
Mm-hmm.
going on around us, like, is really something for us to learn from. And I always try to be like super compassionate with everyone because obviously there's like different levels of being able to like accept it and work on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always just kind of say like, when you're ready to look at it and like work on it, fine. And on days that you're not, like, don't do it. You don't have to.
Yeah.
So that too, I get a lot of like, I've never had someone like read tarot for me this way. Because I feel like it's changed, but I think tarot was so gatekept.
Mm-hmm.
And even I'll like randomly, I had someone once asked me like, when should I come back for a reading? Like 3 months, 6 months? And I'm like, when you feel right, like because they had someone in the past tell them to come back like they had to come back every so often.
Mm.
So my approach of just being very like laid
Mm-hmm.
back with it is like different for people.
Mm. Yeah, I could see that. I know that, and we didn't really talk about it today, but I know that I've heard, and I'm sure that a lot of people have heard, like you can't buy your own first deck, like it needs to be gifted to you, and in that way, it is gatekeeping. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you're out of the loop until I say you're out of the loop or in the loop. So,
Yeah, there's so many, and like that was all a part of like my imposter syndrome in the
mm-hmm.
beginning. of, you know, you're not supposed to read for yourself. I'm like,
Mhm.
I do all of these things.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't know any of that because I've been
Yeah, you're
doing it
like,
all.
wait.
I bought my first deck. I read for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, it's good to go into it blind that way.
Exactly. Didn't know I was breaking the rules.
Yeah, there are no rules.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It also gives people a chance to kind of lean into their intuition, which is
Exactly.
important.
That's the whole point of this, is like to empower yourself. Like, if you keep telling yourself your intuition is wrong, it's not going to get any better. Like,
Hmm.
that you just create an internal struggle with yourself.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm gonna kind of go broad here, but I feel like there's a lot of things in like the spiritual world or like the metaphysical world or like kind of tarot and Reiki and intuitive readings and all this stuff that like is very imposter syndrome for a lot of us who either didn't come from this type of background or are in like the scientific field or like, you know, these type of things. It's like we feel that it's not good enough, that it's like that we're not right, like this isn't what
Yeah,
we're supposed to do, and because we didn't come from this type of background and we don't know a bunch of people and we're, you know, not super woo woo, that we can't be.
exactly.
So
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what I said before with like the decks, of like the energy you put into it is the energy you get out of it. So like, just believe. If you don't believe in yourself, it's not going to happen. If you know, continue to work on that connection with yourself and continue to believe with yourself, then you'll see it all come to fruition for you.
mhm. Is there like a type of, there's a specific spread that you usually use? Like, can you explain kind of the different, like different spreads in general? Like, how, what does that mean?
Yeah, sure. So, all depends on what I'm doing. So, like in my day to day, I don't usually use spreads. I like to just kind of pick a card or two and just see how those energies work together, and just kind of like, I usually look at the cards individually and then look at them together.
Are you asking a question before you pull the card, or you just pull the
Usually
card,
just
see
like
what
what
happens?
I need to hear today, or
Okay.
whatever messages. In terms of like journaling, it's just like, what else do I need to like look into? What am I not kind of like looking at, or any additional messages that I'm open to? Um, and that was probably a way I did tarot for like most of the time. Spreads when I first started were like way too intimidating to kind of like
Mm-hmm.
fit the meaning of a card in a specific area, was way too much for me. So I kind of like to just like pick a card and like look at it and then pick another one and like build the story that way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll do that every so often with clients that are like, I don't really know, like just kind of wanted a conversation with the universe today. And I'm like, okay, let's just do this. But I do have some, now that I've like gotten more into tarot and I've really started reading for others, I've gotten into some spreads. The number one that
Mm-hmm.
I like to do is a variation of the Celtic cross spread. So Celtic cross spread is one that like is shown everywhere in tarot. Like if you look up spreads, it's probably going to be one of the first, if it's not the 3 card spread, it's going to be the Celtic cross spread that you see. Um the Celtic cross spread, I think, has like 10 cards, so it's a lot of cards.
Mm-hmm.
And you can definitely get into it in like a deeper reading, but I like to break it down into either 4 cards or 6 cards. And how that looks is, you have a center card that's like general energy. So just how the universe sees you, what's going on. You'll have a crossing card, and this card is either helping or hindering. You have a card in the past, so stuff that you can kind of like move away from, close the door on. A
Mm-hmm.
card for the future, stuff that you can start giving your energy towards. And then, so that's like one way of doing the spread. And then sometimes I add 2 additional cards, and that is, it ends up being above. So stuff that's more obvious to you that's going on in your life, and then below. So subconscious energy
Mm-hmm.
for you to look into. And this is a really great spread for kind of like whatever people are looking for, usually general energy. It's really nice because you get to look at everything and you kind of understand what you want to move away from, what you want to go towards. You get like that confirmation of like, okay, I'm feeling this, the like validation of like, this is what's going on with me right now. And also the universe sees me in that way. So I use that one a good amount with clients and people in general, just because it tends to hit like a broad base of what people are looking into. I also, the other two spreads I do most often are, I call it like an element spread. So I break, you have like 3 cards for each section, and we look at your earth energy, which is like your career, finances, your habits, your routines. We look at your water energy, so like your emotions, your close relationships. We look at your fire energy, so like your passion, your creativity, your drive, your spirituality. And then we also look at your air energy, so like your mental. And we look at each of those 4 parts like separately. And then we look at like, how are they all balanced? How are they all working together? And that's a really cool thing to also look at as like a nice check-in for people. Then you can kind of, if people want more information, you can obviously pull like clarifying cards or more in a specific area. And then the final spread that I do most often that I like offer is a year ahead spread. Actually I do, oh my God, there's so many spreads. Year ahead spread. So that just looks like picking 12 cards, doing them month by month. And kind of that's almost like the element one where you like look at it individually and then you look at it broad. Like, okay, this is kind of like, we look at how everything flows together and you start to see this like storyline of like, oh, it makes sense that like this month would lead into this and then that. And you can reflect on it through the year. Then the other spread I was thinking of. So 3 card spreads, I probably use the most often, especially when I'm doing like events. I usually do like some sort of set spread, but that is usually based on the intention of like the evening. 3 card spread, they're fun because you can just make them your own in any sort of way. You can just, whatever you're looking into, pick 3 intentions and like lay the cards in that way. So like past, present, future is a really big one. I do that. And then I like to do like an extended past, present, future spread. So basically like the past gets 3 cards, the present gets 3 cards, and the future will get 3 cards.
I liked the element one. That's cool. Like how it gets broken up by element and then what that means to you, like in your life. That's really cool. I like that
Yeah,
one.
thank you. Yeah, that people seem to really like that one. It's a fun one to do.
Yeah,
I was
like
intrigued by all of them. I feel like spreads are intimidating to me.
Yeah, they're very intimidating.
Yeah. Where you were saying earlier in the beginning, you were very much like 1 or 2 cards, and that's what do I need to hear today? That's where I'm at. So
Yeah, it definitely took like really just me getting super comfortable with the deck and like knowing the meanings in like all, and this was for me, I'm not saying everyone has to like follow this, but like knowing the meanings in all kind of like all sides of the card is what helped me not feel so like rigid when it's funny because like I like my creativity in a box, but like a spread is too rigid for me. Like I don't know where it ends and begins, but as you start to just like learn more meanings of the cards, like there's not just like that one kind of way of looking at it, then it's a little bit easier to like fit into its different places.
Do you find that when you're doing readings for others, is that like draining for you at all?
For the most part, no. Every so often I'll have like a bad migraine after, and I really just kind of like hold that to myself. So when I first started, I wasn't even doing readings. I was just doing pop-ups and like talking to people. And because I am someone that like I say like I'm a mental health advocate and I like talking about my mental health, people will like, you guys are there, you guys are in the field, like people will unload on you. It was really hard when I first started to not take things on at pop-up shows and like just what I would talk to people. So actually my therapist at the time, I like talked to her and I was like, what? I need like help. Like I'm taking things on. And she did Reiki. So she just kind of taught me like a way of like going into things and kind of like reminding yourself that like you're there, like kind of creating like a bubble. And I thankfully have this thing where like someone can tell me something and it can go like in one ear and out the other and I can just forget about things. So I tried to kind of like the readings are like very much in the moment, and then once the person is gone, I try to just get that out of my head, because there's definitely things that follow you and like weigh on you and continue to think about things. But I wouldn't say there's like a specific practice I do like before or after everything. It's just kind of like my own way of like prepping myself and knowing I need to create that barrier to not take things on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like being just a little bit more in tune with if something comes up, if I have a headache, if whatever, then I'll take care of it. But
Yeah,
letting things flow.
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, taking on other people's energy is really, it's very much a thing, and it's hard when you do.
Yeah, and I didn't really know. You don't know until you're doing it, and then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, I was so exhausted after. I'd like skip the work the next day because it was just like I couldn't. I'm like, I just need a whole day to like rest. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, didn't expect that going into it, but it was something I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have a favorite card deck right now that you're using? Is it?
Right now, yeah, I've been going to the Modern Witch a lot, especially when I kind of like read for others. So my like personal go-to deck has always been the Rider Waite. Like I connect, well, Star Child Tarot, the one that I started with, is like my heart and soul. But the deck that like I use the most is probably my Rider Waite. I have like a really good connection with that and like the pictures and everything. And so the Modern Witch is like a modern update on that. It's like prettier cards and much more like I feel like a better connection to it because it just feels more like me. So that's probably the one I use the most with others. With myself, I use either my Rider Waite or my Star Child Tarot. Those are Star Child is actually the one I've been bringing around with me because I didn't use it for a while. It was like my first deck lately, about 2 months ago. So it was like I was looking at it and I was like, it wants to be used. Like, and I pulled some cards with it and we were not connected. So that one, and we're feeling better connected now, but
Feeling
those
better.
two are like my favorite. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Are they all like half falling apart and like?
My Rider Waite deck, yeah, is I'm missing a card in it. I took it hiking with me once and my water bottle
Oh
emptied
no.
in my backpack. So they're like, I love it because there's so much character, but they're all,
Hmm.
when like stuff dries after being waterlogged, like
Yeah,
the whole deck is just all very loved.
it's funny. I like it.
Yeah.
Kim, did you have a question?
No, I
Uh,
had a thought and it came and it went, so
Sorry.
that's okay.
So tell us about kind of like your, do you have a shop? Do you have like what, how do you do you?
So I do have a shop. I originally started sold in just as a pop-up shop, and really I started it because that deck that I had talked about that told me I had to read for others, I was like, I want to see this deck before I buy it. And literally I was just like driving and I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if there was a shop you could go to and just like check out decks. So I'm like, why don't you start one? So that's
Nice.
how I got to where I am. But I started just as a pop-up shop, just to kind of see like the feedback from it, if people felt the same way about tarot, if there was the even interest in it. And then as I was doing pop-ups, people would always ask me if I read, and I would be like, nope, I only read for myself. I only read for myself. But like every
Hmm.
so often you'd get a person, you're like, okay, I'll pull a card for you. Like,
Right.
and those when I would always get like, oh my God, it was spot on. So eventually it grew into me offering readings and being comfortable with offering readings. Honestly, it was more just me needing to get out of my own head. And now I have a spot in Weathersfield at my yoga studio. Actually, it's upstairs. So I'm in Old Weathersfield on Main Street, and I have a little shop. I sell tarot and oracle decks and crystals and basically all the stuff to go along with your tarot practice. And then some other like fun gifty like cards and things just to like buy while you're there. And then in that space, I also do readings and any other like one-on-one sessions, things like that. Yeah, and that is new. I got a space last year. I did move. I hasn't haven't always been with my yoga studio this year. I'm now with the yoga studio. But yeah, it's been a always a development over time.
Oh yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and we'll definitely put your stuff in the show notes. So if people want to get
Thank
a
you.
hold of you or come see you,
Yeah.
do you have any other questions, Kim?
No, I think I learned a lot. I feel a little bit better about pushing myself and learning a little bit more. So
Good.
it's
Mm-hmm.
exciting.
Yay.
I have one question. If you could pull a card for the collective energy at this moment, what do you think it would be? What would you
Ooh,
think it
like
would be?
collective, everyone in general. Probably like a
Loaded, right? Loaded
yeah,
question
yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
that is. So I would honestly, like, I know we're in Taurus season, but I would guess either like a wands or a swords card. I feel like people are very like go, 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 go right now. Like with the weather, with all of that, we're getting like very caught up in like all these things that we can do. So that leaves us almost like, I feel like in the readings that I've been doing, like people almost feeling like burnt out and just,
Mm.
and it's all like things we want to be doing. So it's like, why would I say no to any of this? But also a reminder to just check in with yourself. And then also swords, that like very like in your head because there's so much that you want to be doing type of thing. I feel like that's been coming up a lot in general. Kind of like the thread that I'm seeing through a lot of readings right now.
I feel like you just read me right now.
Giving me the cards.
That's funny. I literally like totally rearranged my living room. I like painted my hallway.
Yeah, just like all what can
It was
grab
like
my attention today.
I went for a run, like all in one day. Like
Yeah, that's it. There it is.
and I have a lot of Taurus in my
Oh, cool.
astrology. So yeah, so I guess I'm feeling it.
Cool.
But yeah, so that was awesome. So, we had a lot of fun. It
Yeah,
was a
me
lot of fun.
too.
So, and we really appreciate it, and we will definitely put all of your stuff in our show notes and
Awesome. Thank you.
put you in our socials. And yeah, and if you ever want to come back.
Yeah. Always. I love talking tarot. So anytime you can have me back. And if you guys anyone ever has any questions about tarot, just reach out to me. I literally, obviously, I love talking about tarot. I could do it all day.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right. Until next time.